Possession crucial from this. How much longer will the referee allow? Dublin lead by a point, and there's the whistle. It's over. It's over.
We earned it by winning the last 2 matches on the road, and that's not going to be taken away from us.
But what I love in hurling, I love players that will never give in.
He hits it. It's over the bar. Oh, holy Moses.
Hello everyone and welcome along to the GAA podcast. Another cracking weekend of championship football and hurling to look ahead to. Nigel Dunne's going to be with us a little bit later on to chat football, but Jacqui Tyrrell is with myself and Rory now to talk all things hurling. And effectively, Jacqui, we've got 2 provincial finals and a relegation decider really this weekend. So Cork, Waterford, Dublin, Galway and Offaly, Antrim, they're the 3 we'll sort of focus on. Let's start with Cork, Waterford, because I think for all of the talk about Cork, the start of the year, league champions, everybody's saying this is the coming team. They're going to be the ones to stop. Suddenly, it's all on the line this weekend and they must feel like they're in nervous territory.
Yeah, and it just shows the tight margins, particularly in the Munster Championship, where one result goes against, it can just put you in so much jeopardy. But the probably thing from Cork is the worrying part is the performance and how, factile or like they just didn't do anything that they had shown throughout the league in the early stages of the Munster round robin. Now, look, you have to bear in mind that this was a Limerick team that were seed, and you could see the anger, the venom of the previous 2 defeats. So it's going to be a challenge for Cork, but I suppose considering the hype and that's spoken about them, they'll just want to get back to the pitch. And it's one of the beauties of the round robin is that, look, 6-7 days later, you have a chance to get back out there. And look, it's do or die in lots of ways for Cork this weekend. Waterford coming to town, probably locally, they're probably getting a bit of stick and things like that. But there was just so much about the Cork performance that was un-Cork-like. They were so naive at the back. They just didn't bring the fight. Their main guys, their top-class hurlers, the Dar Fitzgibbons, the Dees Worlds, they just didn't shine in any shape or form. So I'd say Pat Ryan is probably getting back to basics. Really, really basics. What's made this team really, really good is how they win the ball, how mean they were at the back. And I mean, you only have to look at Aaron Gallan's goal and to see, I could give a small bit of leeway to Niall O'Leary slip, and that can happen. But Christopher Joyce, like, my God, that's like if a junior team did that type of tackle, you'd be tearing shreds off him, So they will know they did not bring the fight. And that's the bare minimum that you have to do in Munster or Leinster or in Hurling Championship. You have to bring the fight. They didn't do that in any shape or form. So when I talk about back to basics, they'll have to go back. Their attitude wasn't right. So did they believe a bit of their hype, or was it just a really flat performance? Only they can figure that out. But they need to figure out what happened and make sure that doesn't happen again this weekend, because Waterford are coming to town, and they're off the back of a reasonably good year so far. And I was only looking this morning at the league. They've conceded one goal in the Munster round robin, which is fascinating considering the level of quality that they've come up against. I know they play tight to Burkett pretty deep, and that has implications going forward in terms of the points to concede, but 1 goal. So look, Cork normally get good 2-3 strong goals. They're going to be up against that challenge this weekend, so they might have to win in a different way that we haven't seen Cork winning this year so far.
Yeah, they might have to win with a different set of players as well, Rory, because if, rumours are to be believed around who's okay, who's not okay, Rob Downey definitely does not look okay based on the last week's performance. 35 minutes he got through. I don't know what he's going to be able for this weekend. Certainly the word is that Niall O'Leary, Decky Dalton, both doubts as well. And if Cork are going to be down a couple of those players, I just wonder what the makeup of the team is as well that goes out this weekend too.
Will be fascinating to see it when it's picked tonight, if that's the team that tugs out on Sunday. Now, the word coming out is that some of the injuries aren't as severe as they initially feared. But I suppose, guys, one of the things that was so striking on Sunday last was they had 3 weeks. I mean, it was nearly the ideal running time after having a back-to-back week to try and get bodies right, get people back, organised, get a bit of R&R into people, and then to really come out and be as flat as they were, then pick up another few injuries, and now you've got to turn around 7 days later. But it's the same boat really for Waterford, who I thought played really well last weekend against Tipperary in patches, and actually were in that game right up to the end. Now, in fairness, Tipperary dug it out, and good luck to them. But it's going to be a big challenge. From what I can gather, look, the hype, we know about the hype. The hype is always going to be there. I always kind of think Cork are a little bit like Manchester United. They're sort of living on former glories, and are struggling a wee bit to try and kind of get back to that level, and they're the kind of one team that everyone loves to hate and loves to beat, but you just have to deal with that. And I suppose with the little bit of a fall from grace from the hype from the league now, to see the championship meander down this type of path, I suppose is a little bit worrying from a supporter's perspective. But they have a brilliant opportunity on Sunday against from what I can gather is another full house in Páirc Uí Chaoimh. The weather forecast I think at the weekend is not good, but look, that doesn't really matter one way or the other. That'll be the same for both teams. We just won't get the kind of sultry conditions that we've been having in the country for the last couple of weeks. And look, it's do or die. It's all on the line. It's like a Munster semi-final in some ways. I know Waterford can't get there, but it is a knockout game effectively for the two teams. And sure, look, isn't that exactly what you would want in the final round robin game of a Munster championship? Yeah,
and look, that's it, Jacqui. Something on the line for both teams. You wonder for Cork, would a Munster final against Limerick at the Gaelic grounds again in 3 weeks' time be a good thing for this team, or would a draw against Waterford to get them into third place and maybe avoid Limerick, rebuild character? Which one of those routes would be a better idea for this Cork team?
I really don't think it matters, Jacqui. I really don't think. And I think the Cork public and players have unbelievable faith in Pat Ryan and getting it right. I think a Munster final in 3 weeks' time, I mean, if you're absolutely obliterated at home and you get an opportunity, if you get over this weekend and you get a chance to get a crack at that team again in 2 or 3 weeks' time in their home ground, I don't think you need to really say a whole lot. All you do is hit the tape for 70 minutes, lads. Look at this again. Are we going up to the Gaelic grounds to endure this again? Or are we going to bring that bit of anger, that bit of attitude, that bit of Corkness up to the Gaelic grounds and have a cut off these lads? And likewise, if they get into third, they will probably more than likely get another crack at Limerick somewhere along the line. So I don't put a huge amount of emphasis on it. Like, I still value and rate this Cork team really high for a couple of reasons. One, Pat Ryan is an outstanding manager, and since he took over the job, has probably got things pretty right. He didn't get last weekend right, and he took that on the chin, but I expect him to get it right this weekend. The level of quality in that Cork team, even with injuries, I think that defensive display to play the weekend, that bucked the trend. They have been defensively very, very solid this last probably year and a half, built around the two Downies. And I think they'll get back to basics in that way. And I just think they're too good. There's too many good players within that. And you have to weigh it up. It was against an outstanding team that were playing with hurt and anger. And I've played against those type of teams. Sometimes it's just not your day. Sometimes you just come up against a team that are just of a higher, they just are in a better place in terms of the anger that they're playing with. And you could see it. It was written all over. Mike Casey, Sean Finn, William O'Donoghue, they just went back to what they're good at, and they were unbelievable, So Cork have to take that on the chin and kind of learn from it as well. That every day you go out is an All-Ireland final, and they know that this weekend is an All-Ireland final. And I don't think it weighs a huge amount of mind. Personally, I'd be thinking if I got embarrassed in my own patch, I couldn't wait to get a crack at that team that did that to them.
Yeah, that's fair. And what about Waterford then, Jacqui? Because, Rory's right. They were in the fight. They were in the game, albeit I think they will look back at their first 15 minutes and say, how did we miss so much and leave ourselves in that position? And I don't know if they would get another opportunity to miss that much and still be in a game the same way that they were. And I think they probably will have learned an awful lot from last weekend as well.
Yeah, I think you need to hit the nail on the head, Jacqui. They just have to be so much more clinical. And Peter Queally referenced it in his interview, I'd say within 30 seconds of that first quarter period of the chances they had, the wides hit. And you almost got this feeling inside, God, they're going to rue those chances because they were so dominant. Jamie Barron was running amok and Stephen Bennett was very lively inside. They were the opportunities. I mean, if that's probably a Cork, a Limerick, they just take on 2, 3, 4 of those points, and suddenly that gap is an awful lot wider for Tipperary. So they just have to become more clinical. I liked an awful lot more about them. I think Mikey Kiley offers them something a bit more balanced in their attack. Probably Desi Hutchison needs to probably step up now as a captain, as a leader of this group. Jamie Barron was outstanding. Ty de Burke plays a certain way, and I like that they don't change for no one. They're willing to concede 3, 4, 5 points from centre forward, but not give away a whole lot in the full back line. And although they don't have the high profile players that other counties have, but the likes of Ian Kenny, Mark Fitzgerald, these guys are really, really good rigid, tough hurlers. So Cork are going to get their fill of it this weekend. They're a very industrious team. They're unhurled.
They're very athletic.
Oh yeah, they don't get the exposure that other teams. But by God, from 1 to 15, you won't get that easy off these. And they kind of mirror Peter Queally. Peter Queally was a guy that went around did his business pretty quietly. Like, you have to remember, he was in the middle of Tony Brown and Colin Lynch going, this lad can mix it with anyone. And there's hallmarks of that team coming through. So I expect Waterford to have a real cut off this Cork team and to go at them physically and to match up well with them and ask the questions that Limerick asked and see if Cork have the answers this week.
Yeah. I tell you what, Rory, you'd got some odds on the 3 getting out of Munster being Tipperary, Limerick and Waterford, if that's how it comes out, which would be an unbelievable Munster championship.
Yeah, and the All-Ireland finalists from last year out of the championship on the 25th of May. I don't see it though. I mean, that's not any sort of parochial sense. I think it'll be still a big ask. You would expect a response from Cork. The place will be full. It'll probably be, will it be 90% red there again on Sunday? That counts for something. Páirc Uí Chaoimh, as we know, is a place that Cork love because obviously it's home advantage, and we know we call it that season. I think from Cork's perspective, like, they have to win. Now that brings pressure, but you would assume that they're going to respond to that.
Yeah. What about in Leinster then, Jacqui? Because similar situation in a semi-final game between Dublin and Galway in Parnell Park. I mean, Parnell Park is just one of those also magic grounds that you go to, watching it being,
you hear loads of people giving out about it, Jacqui. I love Parnell Park. I love it. Yeah.
It's a great ground. What do you think of it, Jacqui?
I love going there as a spectator. I hated going there.
Why, Jacqui? Why?
Oh, it's just old pitches and great. The dressing rooms are tight. You come in along Donacarney. It's not really a very inviting place to come in. It's kind of like the Galatasaray welcome to hell kind of atmosphere there. But it just, look, it's not the most luxurious place, but by God, does it generate some atmosphere. I went to Wexford and Dublin this year, lovely sunny day, and Saturday, great atmosphere. It was rocking, the place was. The Dubs were in great form that day. Look, it's just, although I'm sure the pitch, if anyone ever met, isn't any bigger, it just has that feel because the wall
it is tight. It is a tight pitch now,
But it makes it feel a little tighter in there, and but that's great. I often wonder, does it actually suit Dublin in terms of how they play? Because I don't think they're as physical as probably other teams. So, but look, again, Wexford, outside of probably the goals they conceded that day, which is a bit of a trend with this Dublin team, they played really, really well. They played a really smart game. I watched them closely that day. Dara Purcell dropped back so deep. They used the ball really well, but I do have concerns about their full back line. And that came to light, probably their whole defensive unit again against Kilkenny. And like they have shipped an awful lot of amount of goals. They've conceded 11 goals so far, which is
similar kind of goals too, Jacqui, through the middle, like.
Yeah, look, just basic, simple errors, individual errors, not an obvious trend where, they're weak early or they're being ran straight down the middle. It's a mixed bag. I watched back the Kilkenny game as well. And just basic errors, really. Look, Owen O'Donnell is a huge loss, and Paddy Smith is probably filled in the full back line, but it's just a collective thing. And what was very interesting, again, Wexford, and I'm wondering, will they do a similar thing? I felt, again, Wexford, that they put Crummy on Chin, but no, they put Paddy Doyle on him, and actually matched up very well against Lee Chin. Look, Lee Chin still had a good game that day, but he did limit his influence that day. And if you actually look at him closely, he's a clone of Chris Cummy. Paddy, they're the exact same in terms of height.
So would you see him pairing off against Mannion?
Absolutely. I think Dublin will go that way and leave Chris Crummy to anchor that defence and maybe sit a bit deeper and try shut out these goals, because Paddy Doyle, he got a point off Lee Chin that day. He's well able to go man to man. He's athletic. He's strong in the air. Isn't the best hurler. Well, listen,
tough as nails. He is as tough as nails, Jacqui.
He is tough. He's a good yoke. So he is. I liked him that he didn't back off Chin. Chin was giving it to him and he was giving it back, and we're right over at the sideline, and some of the Wexford crowd weren't happy with some of the stuff he was doing, but it was great. And I expect him to maybe tag Mannion, because look, he's just a guy that just needs special treatment. He's in Hurler of the Year form. So defensively, I think this game could really hinge on how Dublin can they shut down that attack? Can they keep the goals down to at least 1, not going over 2? Because they're well able to get them at the other end. They really, really are. It's an explosive attack. I wonder will Donald Burke come back into reckoning this weekend? All to play for. Very, very interesting. I know Dublin of the last recent years just have that better record, and Parnell Park probably will help them a small bit as well. But a very interesting game this weekend.
Yeah, because the jury's still out on Galway. Joe Canning was on with me last Sunday on the Sunday game, Rory, and I was asking him about that. I was like, where do you think they are? And even he just couldn't put his finger on where they are right now, because it just seems they're not settled in the same way that they would have been maybe even 2 years ago.
There's a major transition going on within the team and within the panel. I think some of their older players and some of their greatest ever players are, they're at the latter stages of their careers now. So, like, it is a job of work for Micheál Dunne in a rebuild phase. But look, it's inter-county hurling and it's Galway hurling, so you're not probably going to get too long to do that, to do a job like that. And it's going to be a difficult task. Dublin have a very good record against Galway generally in the championship as well. I think they beat them down in Salthill last year. I think it was a draw the year before that. So I don't think Galway will hold any fears for this Dublin team. I think Dublin are playing at a very, very good level. All the way through. Neil O'Callaghan, as Jacqui said, he seems to have a very clear purpose about the way they want to play. I think when you have that type of clarity within the dressing room, it gives a surety to the performance. So I think Dublin will perform. I don't think Dublin will be flat. Now, I said this last week. I didn't expect a blowout in the Cork Limerick game, and of course what happened. But I can't see a flat performance from Dublin this Sunday. Live on telly, I know the Leinster crowd are giving out because they're not getting any coverage, Jacqui. So, but like we kind of have two, bona fides provincial semi-finals. This one at 2:00 in Parnell. Jacqui mentioned the weather, the crowd, the atmosphere. I think the place will be rocking. I'm really looking forward to it. And yeah, look, I think Galway will have their work cut out, and it's a brilliant opportunity for Dublin.
Yeah.
But what's interesting, how many Dublin teams have come to Nolan Park before and at half time been beaten out the gate and just died away and came back with nothing in the second half? Yeah. I've been at loads of those games and it had a similar feel to the weekend. By God, you can ask questions of Kilkenny and how they fell asleep and all that, but Dublin came back into that game. Dublin took their chances and brought a right good challenge to Kilkenny. So there's a bit of substance this team. So, probably between Micheál last year and what Neil has done this year, there is something coming in terms of the level of resilience and belief in this group. So I found that very interesting. They just came out and they were a different team in the second half.
And to put 321 on any Kilkenny team, Jacqui, is a pretty good scoring now. You know, obviously Jacqui has mentioned about some of the defensive frailties, and look, and of course you would absolutely miss the presence and the physical schutzpah that someone like Owen O'Donnell will give you in and around the square. But look, he's not there, and they just have to move on. But the goals were soft. If they tidy that up, they'll be in for hopefully a long summer, and it will be a good boost for hurling in the capital.
Yeah, and I know they lost the under-20 final last night, but they've been in 4 of the last 6 of those Leinster finals too. So the progression is coming, and you are starting to see it. What about at the other end of the table then, Jacqui and Leinster? Because I think everybody even on the outside can sense the pressure on both of these teams for different reasons, I would suggest, right? Offaly are obviously a very coming force in the same way that we've spoken about Dublin. You look at what they're doing at an underage level, and it's been phenomenal over the last number of years. Antrim are in a different trajectory, and it seems like the pressure is mounting there. And given the way even Davy is speaking after games and he's talking about referees and different things, and it just feels like these two teams, there's a need in both counties, but I don't know which is greater for 2 different reasons.
Yeah, I think it's Offaly's need is greater, and probably Offaly's biggest game in 20 years. It's a Joe McDonagh Cup final really in lots of ways. I think Offaly, if Offaly lose this, I think it's probably a bigger setback than Antrim. You could see Antrim going down, maybe circling the wagons, getting some of the guys that are injured and getting them back. I think
and they've done it before.
Yeah, they have, and they have a history of doing it. I think it's a bigger game for Offaly. I think Offaly have more stuff to probably bring with them into this game. I would say confidence is probably at a higher ebb than Antrim. Antrim just have had really, really poor Leinster Championship, have shipped some big beatings. Morale seems exceptionally low. Davies' body language just doesn't seem good. And there isn't a huge amount of positivity in there. If you look at the Offaly, like they did push some of the big teams. They ran Dublin relative very, very close. They put Wexford to their pin of their collar. So there's probably a bit more stuff to be positive around that within that group. So I do expect Offaly maybe to be in a better place in terms of this weekend. But look, Davy is known to have a few tricks up their sleeve. He could have been holding back this team for one big All-Ireland final, which is this weekend, which he's kind of done in the past as well. But I do expect, just looking at the teams, there's a bit more quality in this Offaly team. The fact that they're at home is huge as well. And just the vibes from the Antrim camp are not good, you know. I mean, I know when they had to send it off, that totally changed the game, but they were 10 points down at that stage playing with the Breeze. It was game over again, Galway.
Yeah, and I think the difficulty for both teams, Rory, is the scramble to get out. Like when you look at what's going on in the Joe McDonagh even right now with the scrap to get into a final, it's not straightforward that either of these teams would go down there. Like I think Carlow might have thought, yeah, we'll go back down, we can win and get back up. It's actually not that easy. So staying in the division is actually the hardest part about this.
Yeah, and you can spiral. Sometimes it can be a double drop. You know, where teams, like if you, depending on the age profile, you might get you might suffer a relegation. All of a sudden, there's a mass exodus from the panel. Lads decide, I don't want to play that level. I'm finished. I'm at this stage of my career. Then you have a rebuild job in a competition that's very competitive, by the way, extremely competitive. And all of a sudden, you find yourself struggling in that as well. That happened to Offaly a couple of years ago. They ended up in Christy Ring, and it took them a while to kind of recover from that. So it's a huge game actually in many ways this weekend. It is effectively a Joe McDonagh final for 2026, and Jacqui mentioned there as well. Just the 13 goals Offaly or Antrim have conceded. Complaining about referees and giving out about this and that. I see Sambo is out in the paper today saying, look, management kind of just need to cop on and just focus on hurling really and focus on the games themselves and forget about circuses and everything else that's going on around it. And a lot of the noise coming out it's not good. It would be a bad vibe you would tend to get from an Antrim perspective, Offaly at home, and I think their need is greater. They should should be good enough to win, but this it could be you couldn't call it really one way or the other.
Yeah, huge game, that one. Let's finish off then, Jacqui, with a quick word on the Joe Mac, because I think Kildare's run this competition maybe has surprised some people, but I think, knowing Brian Dowling and what he's been doing there, the development that went on before him with David Herity, the Kilkenny good gospel has obviously been spread there far and wide.
Yeah, look, Brian has done an exceptional job. His last two results, particularly Laois the weekend and the manner in which they won, has just propelled them into a great position. And if you look at the league fixture or the league standings, 3 on 6 and 3 on 2, there's such parity in Joe Mac, and it just continues to be an outstanding competition of guys all of a similar level, really, really putting a huge amount, because no one looks at the Joe McDonagh and doesn't really go after. It's not like the Tailteann Cup where some teams kind of pick and choose. So this weekend is huge if you look at the fixtures. If Kildare were to come from where they've come, 2 games ago to get into a Joe McDonagh final, and potentially they could win it then at that stage, because they're just playing with such confidence, such momentum. The goals they scored the weekend, playing a really good brand of hurling. Laois had been flying it up to that point, so I'm sure there's a few more twists and tails before we pan out and see what they're. And likewise at the other end, Kerry, Westmeath, and Down had a big win over Kerry last weekend to give them a chance of staying up, because I think it might be important for them to stay up considering their league success. So huge jeopardy there in terms of the final weekend.
Yeah, listen, so much to look forward to. It's going to be a cracking weekend, as Rory says. Maybe the weather isn't going to be spectacular, but hopefully the hurling and the football will be. Jacqui, thanks a million for being with us, and enjoy the matches, and we'll talk to you soon.
He hits it! It's over the bar!
Okay, Nigel has joined us now to chat football. And before we get into the All-Ireland series, let's start with the success of your Offaly minor footballers. And what a week. You know, like just I looked at the celebrations afterwards. What an incredible achievement. What an unbelievable week. And a new term, Offalyness, has taken over the country, which I love too.
Nigel's going to have to explain to us what that means.
Yeah, no, how are we all? No, Offalyness, that's everywhere the last 2 days. It's very funny. And I think it means different things to different people. It's nearly like, you know, when a songwriter writes a song with deep lyrics, they want everyone to take their own interpretation. So
that's the way Roger feels, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, no, Roger summed it up lovely with TG4 the other day. I thought the emotion kind of captured the whole Offaly public. But Offalyness to me is a bit of, like, you go against logic. You don't kind of care about odds or opinions, and it's that never say die bit of dog ignorance. And it was brilliant. Like, Monday evening was very emotional, Jacqui. It was nearly like we were transporting a time machine back to the good old days, because, like, we've had success in the last few years, but Monday was a throwback to when we were coming from behind and coming down the stretch. Offaly teams always fancied themselves that we'd get over the line, and, like, really, Monday evening, 3 or 4 times we were dead. Like, we were hanging on. This is an outstanding Loud team, but they never buried us. And once we had that opportunity of winning, and we only had a 2-minute opportunity to win it, we went and done it, and it was amazing. And it's the camera kept cutting. I watched it back more than I probably should have at this stage, but it went into Seamus Darby in the crowd and Johnny Cooney. Johnny Cooney was man of the match in the 72 draw in All-Ireland. He scored 1-3 from play. Seamus Darby scored the most famous goal in GAA history. And the two of them were on the pitch afterwards, roaring, crying. And, like, all we have in Offaly is GAA. I know Shane Lowry in the golf recently, but GAA means everything to the Offaly public, and it's captured the imagination, and it's brilliant. And them young lads have put in such work. They're a credit to their families and clubs, so I'm so proud of them.
Yeah, it's unbelievable when a county like that has that kind of success, Rory, isn't it? Because I think you can feel the whole country feeding off that. When you've got a Leinster final and it's Offaly and Louth, you know that there's going to be incredible scenes either way, and it seems like everybody buys into it.
It was such a magical experience, and for a Monday night, it was firstly. I think Newbridge is a fantastic venue. What an outstanding venue and a brilliant place for a final. It looks good, the pitch is good, the atmosphere is good. It was a really good setting for a final like that. The quality of the two teams on show, a non-Dublin final, which I think is always fresh. It was just attack, you attack, I attack. One of the things that I think has been a revelation, actually. Underage football didn't really, I don't know how Nigel might feel about this, but underage football didn't really suffer the type of cynical play that we saw Gaelic football veer towards. Like, we would have always associated minor and under 20 with a little bit more free-form football, because I suppose you don't have the same type of time, you don't have the same amount of minutes on the field in a training sense to kind of put that cynicism and those defensive type structures into play. So it generally tends to be a little bit more off the cuff. So even in the dark days of Gaelic football, minor and under 21, 20s was a little bit better to watch. What I think is, it's almost like that the rules have now, you know, to use Jim Gavin's phrase, enhanced. So what they've done is they've enhanced those underage games even to a greater level. And it was just a brilliant game of Gaelic football to watch from start to finish. Incredible finish, goals late on, 2-pointers. The goalkeeper, I mean, like, you talk about Rory Began or Niall Morgan and Sean Patton. Like, what a fella to kick a dead ball for you, Nigel. And then the scenes afterwards. And I knew what Offalyness was, because there's just... It's almost like it's one of these phrases, Jacqui, you can't really put a handle on it. You don't know what, no one knows what it means. It's almost like a word that just describes a sort of a spirit or a sense of being or a sort of a state of mind. And I think only Offaly people really understand that. And it just came out in spades. And to my mind, and look, Louth played their part as well. They didn't get to complete the clean sweep, but they acquitted themselves so well. It was a marvellous occasion, and you could only but say congrats. And was that your young lad that got man of the match, Nigel?
No, I'm old, Rory, but I'm not that old.
I was going to say, Jenny,
No,
don't tell me he's that old.
he may be a relation of some sorts because my grandfather's from Clara, but no,
Okay,
Dylan
sorry.
Dunne, he was outstanding. Yeah. We had a whole lot of heroes, but no, Dylan may be a far out relation, but he's not. My son had the cup down in the house the other day, but he's only 2, so maybe
there's time yet.
14.
Yeah. Well, if the underage success keeps motoring, then you never know, because it does seem whatever has been happening in the county, and we were just chatting about the success of the hurlers and being able to get to a Leinster championship and trying to stay there obviously this weekend. But the success in the county over the last number of years has been incredible, hasn't it?
Yeah, no, it is amazing, and the last 5 years from an underage point of view has been tremendous. And but ultimately, Jacqui, it's all what we need is competitive senior football and senior hurling teams. So it's imperative that we beat Antrim at the weekend and retain our senior hurling status.
Yeah.
And from I put my football hat on. I'd love us to really get to the top end of Division 2 in the National League next year, because I think that we're very good at playing at the level of our opposition. So if we can, the higher we get up the divisions, we can actually play at a better level. And when we found ourselves kind of in the doldrums for the last 10 years, that we kind of played at that level. So if we retain our hurling status on Sunday and we have a solid Division 2 next year, there's so much underage talent coming that I think we'll be okay. But there's no guarantees, and you can't rest in your laurels. I think Michael Dignan, in fairness to him, he done an amazing job. I've always said that Michael came in and he had a Hall of Fame career as a player, but what he done in the 5 years in his chairmanship was even better again, because he changed the mindset and culture, or not even changed it, maybe reverted back to of old, where the Offaly crest we kind of went with, it meant something again, and there had to be standards upheld. But it's all like winning Monday night was brilliant. Winning the 20 All-Ireland last year and the football a few years ago, the 20 All-Ireland, it is still all development. And ultimately, I know in Offaly you'll ultimately be judged on can you win Sam Maguire or Liam McCarthy. We've only managed it 7 times between the both of them, but
that's all.
But like it's brilliant, and you could argue we're punching above our weight, but we want to get up the steps of Hogan Stand on the biggest days again, and that's the overall aim.
Yeah, well, best of luck with that, and congratulations on everything you've already done in terms of the development of that. Let's talk about the Sam Maguire then, because big couple of key games this weekend with some of those heavyweights who might be contending for the trophy. No more so than Donegal Tyrone, which has the feel of 2 heavyweights really going at it this weekend. And you wonder what the danger is for a Donegal team who seem like they've been motoring so well this far, Nigel. But Tyrone is a huge game for them.
Yeah, I think with Donegal, Jacqui, is the one thing I think we're going to get is that consistency of performance. They're kind of ruthless in their performance, is always there. With Tyrone, we're kind of hoping they show up, that they're a little bit more inconsistent. They're trying to find their way, they're trying to find their identity. But in fairness to Jim McGuinness, and I know Tyrone will not be taken for granted in Donegal dressing room. In Jimmy's first tenure and in his book and in different interviews, he referenced that Tyrone was the yardstick for them, and he wanted to take them off their perch, and he's beaten them every time. So Tyrone is a massive game for the people of Donegal, and this weekend's going to be no different. We know what we're going to get with Donegal. They're going to put in a 7, 8, 9 out of 10 performance, and I think with Donegal, it's the system, it's the structure, it's the complete buy-in all the players have, and I think for Tyrone to win, they're going to need a little bit of sprinkle of stardust with maybe Dara Canavan, Darren McCurry, who are gifted and they're geniuses. And it's funny watching Dara Canavan play, because I grew up idolising Peter Canavan, and he's just so like him. The way he leans in to create space with his shoulder to create the separation. I think for Tyrone to win this game, they're going to need Dara and Darren McCurry to have excellent games, where Donegal can rely on their system, that it's so choreographed, it's so ingrained in them, and they've such belief in everything Jim McGuinness asked them that, yeah, it's going to be enthralling. It's going to be very hard for Tyrone to overturn them, but it's definitely not beyond the bounds of possibility.
Yeah. Well, listen, that's it, Rory. It wouldn't be a massive shock either, because if Tyrone were to get that glittering of stardust and get a run on it, you could absolutely see them you could see them winning. The one thing is, goals have been pretty scarce. So if it is going to be that sprinkling of stardust, it's still going to be a tight game. I think they've only had 2 goals in their last 4 matches between them. So it's not like this is going to be a goal fest either.
This will be about distance shooting, I would imagine.
Yeah.
But both teams have, you know, a lot of quality when it comes to that side of it as well. I think from it, like, there's one disappointing aspect, I suppose, for me, in that this is almost like a carbon copy of what happened in the championship last year from a Donegal perspective, going in as Ulster champions after playing an extra time barnstormer of a game against Armagh. And who did they run into in their first round robin game? Only Tyrrell. It just lacks a bit of freshness, I suppose. But look, it's no less intrigue as well at the same time. But if you're to look at Donegal's, I suppose, their itinerary, so they've had what? Derry, Monaghan, Down, and Armagh, and now they're going to play Tyrone and Cavan. So that's 6 Ulster Championship. There's 6 counties in Ulster that they're going to play in the Championship minimum. There's only 9 counties up there, including themselves, right? That must be a record. Like, I don't know, does that do Donegal any favours? And I'm not sure if it does the championship any favours, but look, that's the way it is.
But do you not think, though, sorry, on the flip side of that those games are much more difficult for them than, let's say, what Kerry are getting? Yeah,
no, that is true. I think it definitely road tests them. But I suppose my only concern is that there is there's a physical and fractious nature to Ulster Championship matches, and they could potentially start to pick up a few knocks and niggles. Yeah. This is where it'll probably really test the depth in their panel, and they have a very deep panel. And we've also seen a slight vulnerability as well from the provincial champions. You know, the fact that they've got to come down off that high, particularly a high like winning one of the greatest Ulster finals I think I've ever seen. Coming down off that, we saw it with Galway at the weekend. We've seen it, Kerry, I suppose, took care of business reasonably comfortably, but we saw how flat Mayo were on the other side. So I suppose that's the challenge. Tyrone really have kind of been tucked away now, and this time last year met, as I said, in a similar round. Donegal, I think, won extremely comfortably. I think it'll be a little bit closer this time. It's been Ballybuffet. Donegal very, very rarely lose there. I think Tyrone will get closer. I'm not sure if it'll be good enough to get a win, though.
Can I ask you that on that Rory's point there, Nigel, what you would feel from being involved as a player of what you might like in terms of that road testing? Would you be in that model of, like last year, people would argue Donegal actually ran out of steam on the road to an All-Ireland final. So do those games actually take too much out of them? Or would you prefer to be on the other side of it where you want to get that hard road testing? You need to find out every single thing about your panel.
Yeah, I think there's probably somewhere in between, Jacqui. There's a happy medium. I'd actually agree with Rory. I think it's going to be extremely taxing for Donegal mentally as well as physically. Like if they're to get to an All-Ireland semi-final, there's a lot of mental baggage, a lot of physical preparation for that. I do think it could potentially hinder them, whereas the Kerry, for example, could come in a little bit fresher. Now, I say that Kerry, the lack of road testing last year against Armagh cost Kerry. But I feel with this Donegal team, it's built on counter-attacking football, pace, intensity. Everything is so aggressive and so high-pitched that it's really hard to keep it at that such high tempo for a sustained period. Now, they have one of the great managers and he's their messiah, and if anyone can keep them at that pitch, it's Jim McGuinness. And what I thought was very interesting the last day was they actually mixed it up a little bit. I think I said to you, Rory and Mikey, the last time that they were a bit predictable, and then in the very next game, they launched a few bombers into Benjamin Button himself, Michael Murphy, and he was like that in itself will keep opposition. It'll keep them honest. Like it means they might lower their defensive line that little bit where they'll be anticipating a long ball, and then you can create a 1v1 or a 2-point shot. So Donegal did add variety the last day, and I do think for them to go deep into the championship, they will need that variety because the road they're going to have is tough enough, and the style of play they have is taxing enough that they're going to need the variety of being able to kick.
Yeah. Interesting. Okay, that's one to watch. I think if there's danger for Donegal with Tyrone, then maybe there's a weird sort of an eerie feeling around Armagh Derry as well, Nigel, because Derry have been very quietly sitting back, waiting for this, and we haven't heard a whole lot. We don't know what they're going to bring this weekend. And they're playing against the All-Ireland champions, and it's not on television. I mean, this could be a complete ambush and people won't see it.
It is set up for an ambush, Jacqui. It absolutely is. This is the quietest I've heard the Derry camp or the whole noise surrounding Derry in the last 18 months, it's probably a good thing from their point of view, because there was a stage there where there were stories coming out every second day. The Derry, I think there should be a case study done on what's happened in Derry. I have no idea how a team with back-to-back Ulster titles win a brilliant Division 1 title against Dublin, where at that stage we were all saying this is their chance now to take the next step. And then they fall off a cliff, and they fall off a cliff in such dramatic fashion that it's incredible. I don't think I've ever seen such a steep fall. I don't know what, there's been 14 league championship games since, and they've won one in regulation time, beating Westmeath. They beat Mayo on penalties, all right, but like it's incredible. Whereas Armagh, like I said with Donegal earlier, Armagh are going to produce a performance. I could be wrong on this statistic, but I heard it in some podcast or read it somewhere that in the last 3 years, and Rory, maybe you might know, or Jack, you might know, Armagh have only lost one game in 70 minutes regulations in 3 years, championship football. Like that shows how hard they are to be beaten. They're defiant. They're like everything Kieran McGeeney was as a player has transferred onto them. And Derry just don't have that same, at the moment, they don't have that same consistency. They seem like they are definitely searching for something. And unless they find it in this group series of the All-Ireland, I think it's going to be too late for this, what is really a brilliantly talented group of players, but time's running out for them, unfortunately.
Yeah, and the thing is, you only have that small window, Rory, to capitalise on that success. Like that's the hard part for Derry.
Oh yeah, Nigel articulated really well the fall off a cliff and the interesting case study to be made there in such, like, we have to remember they had a manager who they obviously loved, and they went from Division 4 under that manager all the way up to Division 1. That manager obviously had to leave for reasons we all, that are well in the public domain at this stage. And there has seemed to be a disquiet and a malaise set in ever since. They've obviously lost a couple of key players. Chrissy McCaig, I'd say, is a big leader. He retired. He would have been a massive presence in that dressing room. Gareth McKinless, who, as we know, is out injured and long-term probably won't be back till next year. Another massive player. Like, that's effectively your 3 and 6. So that's taken the spine out of your defence in a year now where you've moved into, a slightly more attacking form of football. So, and then Nigel again articulated, they haven't won a match in I don't know how long at this stage. They lost the one draw in the National League this year. They beat Westmeath in the Championship last year. They obviously knocked Mayo out, but that was on penalties. It has been a bit of a disaster, but they haven't played a championship match since the 8th of April. It is now going to be the 24th of May by the time they tog out again. So that's like nearly a 2-month window of, and I mean, I don't know, Nigel, could you do an entire pre-season in that 2 months? And could you press a major reset button from a manager's perspective?
That as a player, that's the nightmare scenario.
On very dry ground.
Yeah. It's like it's a bit like the Monaghan Louth game. Like Monaghan seem like they're out of sight, out of mind, and there's something similar with Derry like that. But I'm sure. I think for Derry it will be helpful though. I do think they need that time to reassess, and they spent years building up the confidence to go from Division 4 to Division 1 to get that inner belief that they were good enough to compete at the top table, and then it's all washed away. So they have the ability. They can fall back on what they had in the not too distant past, and they had to use this time to find that spark again because. Yeah, they have brilliant underage players coming, but and Derry will be fine. Like Derry will win more Ulster titles in the next 10 years and potentially in All-Ireland. But for this group of players, for the Shane McGuigans, the Conor Glasses, like generational talents.
The Rogers.
Yeah, Rogers, like what a player. Their careers could go by and ultimately be unfulfilled, and that's nearly a sin.
Yeah. Well, it's an intriguing game, and
it is a surprise though, Jacqui, that it's not being shown.
I couldn't believe it.
In the telecontext, because I think there is still definitely an element of intrigue around Derry. And obviously, if the All-Ireland champions beginning their defence. Now, the game is in the Athletic Grounds. There'll be a massive crowd because we know how the rabid following that Armagh have. But I do think it's an odd one now. And if there was an upset there, we could hear the catcalls come out quite quickly.
Well, as you say, Monaghan have been quietly sitting, waiting as well for their chance to get at a Louth team who, I think in a lot of ways, Nigel, calling a spade, have been the story of the summer. Like, there's been lots of incredible stories happen. The provincial championships have been brilliant. But I think that the Louth story is the one that people have been getting behind. And it's almost a pity that they don't actually have a real home game this weekend for their team to get behind, because going to Newbridge, albeit, as Rory says, brilliant venue and all that, and it's great, you would have loved for the people of Louth to have been able to celebrate a Leinster title with their first game at home in their own venue.
Yeah, no, that's probably the only kind of small glitch in the whole thing, is that there'd be kind of a carnival atmosphere in your home ground if, like, you're coming Leinster champions at first time in such a long time. But I think what I think from a Louth point of view is they absolutely have been the story of the summer. It was remarkable, the game against Meath. It was an injection of life that the GAA championship needed, and the Leinster championship definitely needed. I can't remember the last time I was at a Leinster final with such colour, anticipation, and right till Craig Lennon tipped over that point, and like, you just didn't know which way it was going to go. It was Louth were full value for it, and it'll be very interesting to see what their mindset is. Rory spoke earlier about the come down. Are they able now to mentally reset that? Like, they're really good. They're a mature Division 2 team. They can get out of this group, and once they approach it like there's now another trophy up for grabs, let's approach it in the correct manner. Let's not see the Leinster Championship as a stopping point. Let's see it as this is another chance for more development for this team. Like I said about Derry underage, Louth's underage is fantastic. So the senior team at the moment make hay while the sun shines, because there's a new crop coming to, like, careers are short for these guys. They need to stand rise, and that their abilities deserve to be aired on the biggest days. And Louth are coming in a really, really good place for this Monaghan game. But I know Gabriel Bannick, and I know a few of the Monaghan lads very well, and they seem to be sitting in the long grass. It's very quiet there, and they're we talk about Offalyness. Monaghanness is something I'd imagine, like, there's a bit of stubbornness there as well, a bit of resilience. Like, they weren't too far away from Donegal. They're seasoned, they're mature in their self. I think this will be an arm wrestle, Jacqui. I don't think this will be a game of ping pong. I think this will be an arm wrestle. A lot of slow phase play with set attacks, but I don't think that'll make it any less intriguing, if I'm honest.
Yeah, an arm wrestle. That's actually a great description of it, Rory. Because that is exactly what I think Monaghan are going to bring, given their performances in Ulster. I definitely think that they will feel we're the big dog here, and we're actually going to prove that.
And they met in the round robin last year as well. We see a lot of repeats actually in the round robin, which is a curious aspect. But they met last year and they played out a draw in Clonus. I think a lot of people felt when Louth were going up there at that time that Monaghan would take care of business. I think the two teams are coming into this year's round robin under very different sort of auspice, insofar as you now have a wave of positivity and huge element of fervour and hype around Louth, and Monaghan coming in quietly about their business, which is usually when Monaghan are at their most dangerous. But I agree with Nigel. I think Nigel is spot on. This is an unbelievable opportunity for Louth. I mean, look, you would hope the 2 weeks, I'd imagine the first couple of days they enjoyed themselves, and rightly so. But I would hope over the last 10 days now that they've sort of knuckled down and said, look at the group we're in. What an opportunity to plant a foot in an All-Ireland quarter-final. Give ourselves a bye week and potentially spring a shock there as well. Yeah. So, like, they could, like, this is the group without any question the greatest opportunity to get that 1 foot in the last 8. And I think Ger Brennan and Niall Moyna and James McCartan and all these very shrewd guys that he's brought in, I think they'll realise the opportunity it is as well. And they've got to probably get the ball rolling. Now, I know the venue is causing a little bit of hassle. I think the Monaghan people are not too happy. It's a good old spin for them down to Newbridge. But I think, look, that is, I suppose, the one fly in the ointment. It's a pity that it couldn't have been staged in Drogheda or Dundalk. But to be fair to Louth, I think by all accounts they're going to fix that problem too. And look, there's a great wind in their sails. We spoke about inspiring chairpersons earlier when Nigel mentioned Michael. In fairness to Louth, they've had some brilliant officers themselves. And I think, I think their story will continue, and I could see them winning actually at the weekend. It's one I'm really looking forward to. I don't know if I'll get to see it because I'll be up the road in Navan.
Yeah, where there'll be all kinds of jeopardy there as well, because as you say, first of all, in that group 3, obviously Clare and Down being the other 2 teams, massive opportunity there. But also I think in that group, Rory, where you're going to that game, you've got Kerry, who are obviously the outstanding team in that group. But after that, Meath, Roscommon and Cork, those 3 teams will all feel we can beat each other. So actually that game that you're going to in Navan this weekend between Meath and Cork, the winner of this is suddenly going, right, I'm getting out of the group now. So what's my next opportunity? That's the key here.
Yeah, and like it's a big game for both teams. Again, it'll be very interesting just to see what the mindset is from me. I'd expect them to respond. I think they played really well in a lot of patches in that Leinster final. There were some parts of it where they were electric. I mean, some of the football they played, they went on scoring spurts there. You wouldn't know what team could have lived with them. But I suppose they had lulls, and that kind of happens when a team is trying to develop and move up to the next level. And they're not perfect, but neither are Cork, neither are Roscommon. That's what makes that sort of 3 ball so intriguing, insofar as it's really very much toss of a coin. Look, we all know Kerry will top this group. It'd be remarkable if they didn't. They're by far and away the best team, but this is a huge game, and I think it's a huge game for both teams. Not too sure what kind of crowd is going to be at it. I think from Cork's perspective, most of their injuries have cleared up. They weren't able to get that red card for Brady overturned, which I think John Cleary is really unhappy about. Conor Corbett and Cathal O'Mahony are apparently back training and a much more and will give him more options in attack. And from Meath's perspective, they'll have gotten a bit more time into Jordan Morris. We saw him coming on the last day. I think he'll obviously have a few more minutes under his belt. They have, with the likes of Frayne and Matthew Costello, they have some serious weapons as well. As we were mentioned earlier, the weather forecast isn't meant to be great. That could, be another leveler. But I'm sure, look, we all saw what happened in Páirc Uí Chaoimh under the lashings of rain. Cork are well used to playing in the rain, so that's what we're hoping for, fingers crossed.
Yeah. The key thing is, look, I mean, maybe Cork will feel, Nigel, that they missed an opportunity against Kerry, and whether you agree with that or not, that's certainly the way I think that they feel. And then Meath will feel similar, that they had a Leinster title in their grasp and maybe they missed an opportunity too. And it's how both of these teams respond to that disappointment this weekend is actually going to define their season.
Yeah. And I suppose, look, the reality is both Cork and Meath did miss an opportunity, but there was kind of a narrative in there that Kerry were maybe a little bit off or whatever, but I actually think Cork were excellent. And I think you're right, Jacqui, it's how Meath and Cork respond to, like, there's getting beaten in them type of circumstances when you could have won and upset, in Cork's instance, upset a real big hitter, and in Meath's instance where, look, they'd knocked out Dublin, they'd slayed Goliath, but they fell short. Like, so there's a bit of baggage there now for both teams that they might feel they fell short. These are both counties that historically there's a great rivalry there, and at one stage they were the kingpins of Ireland, and they're both searching to get back there. They're both, I would say, at times it seems, and it's probably unfair of me to say, but it's my honest opinion, there's a little bit of mental fragility there, but they have the ability. If it wasn't going to be such bad weather this weekend, I think this would be a game of 2-pointers. And it might still be if there's a bit of wind with the rain or whatever, but I think this could be the game of the weekend, actually. I think this could be the game of the weekend. I think it's set up for, they generally produce good football, the two teams, and I think all eyes will be elsewhere, but I know Rory's heading up there. I think he could have chosen wisely, and I think this could be the game of the weekend.
I hope you're right, Nigel. I'll be bringing the umbrella anyway, just in case.
Just in case, an umbrella full of optimism. Yeah, well, look, we'll see what comes of it. But look, cracking football to look forward to, I think, and hurling for the weekend. But lads, we'll leave it there for now. Nigel, thanks a million for being with us, and congratulations again to Offaly. More Offalyness for the future for everybody enjoying their success, and to everybody else, wherever you're going this weekend, enjoy the matches, and we will talk to you on Monday.
Possession crucial from this. How much longer will the referee allow? Dublin lead by a